So in this video, I'm going to show you how we laid out this column footing and the anchor bolts using a Topcon LN-150 instrument and Topcon digital layout software. All right, let's get started. First off, I'm in layout points and I'm going to lay out the four corners of this column footing. So I selected the first point I'm going to lay out, and as I go around, I'm just going to tap on the next point and lay those 4 points out, and then just connect the dots with the spray paint. Once I've got the prism pole over the point, I'm going to press the tip of the pole down into the dirt to make a little hole in the dirt, and then I'll just spray it with paint. Alright, so here's the equipment we're using to lay all this out. We've got the Topcon LN-150 instrument, which is on top of the tripod on the left there. And then in my hand is a mini stakeout prism pole with a prism on top and a controller connected to it. Now the other controller with the antennas coming off of it, the gray one, that's my drone controller, and I'm only using that to film this training video. So obviously you don't need that. But the controller that's gray and yellow is an FC6400 rugged tablet basically, and it's got long range Bluetooth, so you can go pretty far away and still be connected to the instrument. And so the thing is, the LN-150 knows where it's at, and it is measuring the prism constantly in order to know where you're at. So that's kind of how this works. And then once it knows where you're at, it'll display that on your screen, and you can select what you want to lay out, and it'll show you your exact position on the screen. And then you've just got a background drawing, which is basically the plans, and you can always tell where you're at walking around on the plans and select whatever you want to lay out. So that's the basics of how this works. Whoops, I gotta stop the video here and point out something I did wrong. So up here at the top of the screen, it gives you your elevation, and it's constantly reading it out. It's a really cool feature, but you have to have your target height set right. And I'm using a pole where the prism is 1 foot 5.5 inches above the tip of the pole. So I should have changed this target height to 1 foot 5.5 inches in order to get an accurate readout in the elevation. I end up doing that later on in the video, and you'll see, but I wanted to point out how cool this elevation feature is, except that I had the wrong target height again. So one of these days I'll get that right and show you. But anyways, let's keep this going. Alright, and now we're at the last footing point. As you could see, it was pretty fast to lay out this footing, and there was no measuring or string lines or batter boards. And now we just draw some lines with paint to connect these dots, and you've drawn out the footing on the ground, and it's ready to be dug. And if you wanted to, you could spray paint a label next to this stating the top of footing elevation or bottom of footing elevation, whatever you want. After they dig this footing, they're going to place the rebar mat down in it, and then they'll be ready to place a 2x4 across this footing that's located on the column line. And they'll use that 2x4 as a way to secure the anchor bolt template while they pour the concrete. And the reason it needs to be on the grid line is because the anchor bolt template is going to be centered at a grid line intersection. So what I'm going to do is give them a point on each end of this footing that's on the grid line, and then they'll just put their 2x4 directly over top of it. In the software, I'm now in the layout lines application, and I've selected the grid line I want to use, and this feature will just basically put you on the line at anywhere you want to be along the line. So I want to put a point up at the top of this footing, and there's a little bit of a cut here that's in the way, and I'm going to move it up along the line until I get to a good spot to make a mark for this line. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And I'll spray paint a dot on it, and then they're just going to place the 2x4 directly over that spray paint, and as long as they can't see the spray paint, the 2x4 will be good enough to place the template on. And there you go. They secured the 2x4 directly over those two spray painted dots, and I can't see any of the spray paint. That means that 2x4 is definitely on the column line and should be good to go. Next thing I'm going to do is mark 2 points that are 1 foot away from the center of the steel column, one going each direction along the column. After that, we'll be able to snap a line or just draw a line connecting these 2 points, and that's all you're going to need laid out in order to be able to set the template with the bolts. All of these points in the background drawing were made ahead of time, and we follow a process that we use on every job to come up with the same kind of project file. And so all of our project files, if they have steel columns, they have a steel column point, which is the center of steel column, and then they have these 2 points that are 1 foot offsets, and we call them COS for column offset. And so I'm in the layout points application and laying out these 2 points. So I'm kind of marking this the same way that I did the footing. I poke a hole into the wood when I know I'm right on the point, and then I take my marker and draw a crosshair over that hole. Now I'm just connecting these 2 dots with a straight edge, and I'm using a marker. I should have used a pencil because my marker kind of crapped out on me. It's also easy if you just use a chalk line to snap a line between the 2 points. Alright, now time to nail this plate to the wood. So we've drawn a large crosshair on this plate. That is the center of the steel column, which is also aligned with the grid lines. The first thing I did was align the line that's drawn on the plate with the line that's drawn on the wood. Now we'll just slide the plate until we get 12 inches from the point to the center mark on the plate. I also like to just double check that these 2 points we shot with the instrument are actually 24 inches apart. And you can see they are exactly 24 inches apart. Once we get that at 12 inches, we'll move the tape over to the other point and just make sure we got 12 inches there. Now all we do is place the bolts in the holes of this template, and we'll adjust the height of the bolts. So we're checking the top of the bolt, and we need to make sure it's about 4.5 inches above the top of footing. So we'll adjust that with the laser level, and now it's time to pour concrete.